Hello there, and welcome to the second episode of the Devotional Drip, a series where we explore and experience a deeper devotional relationship with our higher selves across the altar of our personal and professional lives. As we come into a next level of intimacy and familiarity with our own voice of divine love and faith and trust and clarity and alignment and discernment and grace and compassion and beauty and unlimited creativity, divine solutions and sovereignty, our higher selves, we remember we are both the key and the keeper. And the answers we seek, the answers that perhaps we're currently looking for, can be found when we're willing to go within and listen. So, the Devotional Drip, we have this YouTube series, we've got a corresponding blog series. You can check the link below to head over to the blog after watching this transmission, where you will receive higher self embodiment journal prompts and movement prompts, as well as a playlist for the month of October, or whenever you stumble upon this transmission, to support you in integrating and digesting and getting into some aligned devotional action around what comes forward for you today through this channeled transmission. So, on today's Devotional Drip, we are exploring awakening to eternal and unconditional divine love from within. I channeled this transmission around the Libra 2021 new moon, so there is a big focus on revolutionizing our relationships with self and others and the divine through devotion to living from the eternal love of the heart, so that we can create more beauty and harmony in our lives. The big focus coming forward through this transmission today is external harmony and balance is created through internal harmony and balance. So we're going to talk a lot about self-actualizing and awakening to this well of divine and eternal love within us. What happens when we awaken to this eternal well of divine love? Well, we can fill our cup and the chalice of our being first with that love before showing up to the altar of our relationships. What happens when we do that? What happens when we are willing to connect to this space and we get humble enough with the innocence and curiosity of a child to connect to the love within our own hearts and then approach our relationships from that place? Well, we show up to our relationships so much more hydrated and nourished. It's like, oh, I went to drink from the well to nourish myself, to intake those minerals, to show up really hydrated for the altar of my relationships in the external. So we're going to talk a lot about nourishing our relationship with our own selves and with our unique and individual experience of the divine and divine love and eternal love, because it's different for all of us, and it's going to be, that experience is going to be as different as each of us are as expressions of source. So we're going to generally talk about that pathway, but as we're in this transmission, I'm going to invite you to invite your own higher self to guide you to the nuggets of wisdom and guidance that are appropriate for you and your own experience. So whenever you come to the Blood, Bone, and Honey Temple space, whenever you sit with any of the transmissions from the Devotional Drip, it is always first and foremost about your sovereignty. So taking what resonates and leaving the rest. All right, let's focus back in. So external harmony and balance is created through internal harmony and balance. What happens when we awaken to the eternal well of divine love within us? So we're showing up more hydrated and nourished, first of all, right? We're drinking that water like we just talked about. We're resourcing ourselves. We're nourishing ourselves. And we're showing up more hydrated and nourished. Now, this isn't about perfection. It's not about, oh, I'm in my practice and I'm connecting to divine love, so I'm going to show up perfect in my relationships because I'm like so spiritual. No, that's not the way it goes. In fact, in order to connect to this love, we need to get really humbled. Again, like in this innocence and curiosity of a child, where we're giving ourselves permission to explore and experience and get on the bike and fall off again, and maybe we fall down and we bruise up our knees and we scrape up our elbows. There's this innocence, there's this humbleness, there's this humility when you're in process of connecting deeper to divine love. It can be really vulnerable. Connecting to this space and place within us is about learning how to self-resource so that we can operate in our relationships from a place of interdependency versus codependency. When we operate from the internal knowing and faith that we are divinely loved and protected, it creates a launch pad to do the scary, vulnerable thing of telling the truth, speaking our truth, speaking our needs, and not abandoning ourselves in order to secure love outside of ourselves, because we know we already have it within our own heart, so we don't have to do that anymore. But again, this is really vulnerable, right? It's vulnerable to reconnect to this voice of divine love when all of us have been conditioned and programmed with the voice of the internal punisher of capitalism, patriarchy, and white supremacy. We all have different voices of the punisher within us, but that voice has been loud for so long. It has dominated us on an individual and collective level for so long that overriding that voice and connecting to the voice of love, the voice of unconditional love, like the most pure love of the divine mother, the most pure, unconditional, no matter what you do, no matter how many times you fall down, no matter how many times you forget, no matter how many times you fuck up, there's this well of love within you that is just waiting to love you. But it's so vulnerable to be in our willingness to access that after being gaslit out of it for most of our lives, perhaps up until the point of you seeing this video. Anytime I channel transmissions for the Blood, Bone, and Honey community and for the Divine and Devotional Drip, I'm always asking my higher self and source to allow me to be a vessel for love to pour through me, to reach and meet and anoint the hearts that are magnetized to sit here in this space of sanctuary and communion and conversation. So if this is the first time you're receiving this sort of invitation, or if this is the 100,000,000th bajillionth time you're receiving this invitation, surrendering to that next texture, that next frequency, that next depth of love is vulnerable, because it requires us to break the loyalty, vows, oaths, and agreements we made with this internal punisher and the identities that we developed from that. And it says, I'm willing to leave all of this behind in order to discover who it is that I actually am, and what it is that I actually need, and what it is that I'm actually here to do and be. Which above all, our purpose is to embody love, to be love, to spread love. So, sometimes like the soul mission and like what's my purpose conversation can get really blown out and very like egocentric. But at the base of it, it's like you're here to embody love. Are you doing it at the grocery store? Are you doing it at your work meeting? Are you doing it with your partner? Are you doing it in relationship to yourself? Chances are, if you're not doing it in relationship to yourself, it's probably really challenging to do it in relationship to other people, because again, then you're pouring love out from a deficit. You're loving from a place of deficit, which is then going to have you trying to secure love from outside of you. And is that really love, or is that just codependency? To be interdependent is to have sovereign beings within a container together who are showing up in their sovereignty, and from that place, co-creating. So when we operate from the internal knowing and the faith that we are divinely loved and protected, it creates a launch pad to do the scary, vulnerable truth-telling, speaking our needs, and not abandoning ourselves in order to secure love outside of ourselves, because we know we already have it here in our hearts. We don't have to self-abandon in order to get this love that we need. That's a non-negotiable. Libra is connected to the heart chakra. The heart chakra is also about creating balance and harmony, which is a lot of what Libra is about as well, right? And so when it comes to creating balance and harmony in relationships, I like to think about the relationship as an altar that both parties come to co-create something and be in communion. Are both members of the relationship bringing offerings? What kind of offerings are being made? Is there an intention within the relationship, within this soul contract, these two souls coming together in human bodies to co-create a relationship together? Is there an intention at the foundation of everything to create more beauty, love, healing, and growth? Is there a mutual respect for each other's autonomy and sovereignty? Are we showing up mutually hydrated and nourished? And if someone isn't, and maybe that someone is you, are they or are you in your sovereignty enough to tell the truth about that versus playing the blame game and blaming someone else outside of us for something that we can actually and should be securing and resourcing for ourselves? Are we making our needs within the relationship clear, or are we pretending that we have none at all? That is a huge pattern of mine that I'm still working through as a recovering people pleaser and someone who struggles with codependency, honestly. I think a lot of us do. Are we leaving space for someone else to come to the altar in their sovereignty with their needs, without judging those needs, without having an opinion about those needs, but just honoring that? What is the health of the third being, the relationship? We got these two beings and then we've got this relationship. What's the health of this being that becomes the relationship? When things get dusty or the altar gets mucky, do you have a regular practice of clearing and cleaning the space? I really, really love an exercise that I learned in my yoga teacher training with Thich Nhat Hanh called Beginning Anew. My yoga teacher training was not with Thich Nhat Hanh, I wish. But the practice that I learned within this yoga teacher training from Thich Nhat Hanh is called Beginning Anew. And it's actually a great practice for like that clearing and cleaning and like refresh start of a relationship, and with the invitation of, if you're watching this again around the Libra new moon, but really anytime. This is a great thing to do anytime. I mean, like at the start of every week, this would be a wonderful thing to do, especially if you're in a consistent relationship with a partner who you're looking to create a life and build a life with. The practice is called Beginning Anew, and I'll put a picture of my very worn out piece of paper at the blog below. It's linked. It'll also have the journal prompts and the movement prompts, but I'll put a little picture of my paper from my yoga teacher training that I like to use with my own partner when we're looking to begin anew and just do some clearing and cleaning of the clutter. It's a really loving, facilitated process that anchors and centers kindness. So thank you to Thich Nhat Hanh for that teaching, for this practice, and I will put that on the blog, which is linked below. Okay, let's talk about, I'm just going to shift here. Oh, you can see me in the mirror behind. Hey. Let's talk about our first card that I pulled for this transmission, which is Our Lady of Guadalupe, the Empress of Protection and the patron saint of Mexico. Her little mantra here, her little affirmation is, I am safe and divinely protected, and I am held in love at all times. So what's coming forward from this card is the reminder that the Divine Mother exists within us, and we have a right to connect to that Divine Mother at any moment. Who are you, and what choices do you make, and how are you in relationship, and how do you love when you show up without expectation or needing to secure something in return? So when you're doing the job of mothering yourself and asking yourself for what you need and creating that for yourself versus expecting for someone else to provide it for you. Again, we have the codependency. To access and resource the Divine Mother is to say, wow, I have the capacity to mother and parent the ones within myself that are feeling really wounded or feeling really triggered or feeling really undernourished or under-resourced or out of sorts or discombobulated. You can just imagine that Divine Mother within. And this is, again, it can be hard for those of us who have had traumatizing relationships with our own mother and the archetype of the mother. So this is also a call to radically heal the relationship with that archetype of the mother outside of our own personal experience with our mothers and connect to the essence of the Divine Mother beyond all of the particular trauma we may have experienced from our own earth biological mother, to go beyond that and go back and 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 all the way back and connect to the essence and frequency of that Divine Mother and ask yourself for what you need and create that for yourself and care for yourself from that place of knowing, from that place of resource, versus expecting for someone else to mother you, for someone else to parent you, for someone else to fulfill that basic need of love. Can you self-resource love from the Divine Mother? If there's a little one within who feels abandoned and never got love, then connect to that energy of the Divine Mother, that unconditional loving presence, and love them. Love the one within you that feels abandoned. Get curious enough to ask them questions that will bring you to a place of understanding and aha, and no wonder I do this thing all the time because this one within me feels this way, or no wonder I get so triggered by this thing because there's this one within me that feels this way. And resourcing and accessing this love of the Divine Mother doesn't mean that we also won't receive love from other people. Of course we will. We're here to be in community. But when you choose in your sovereignty to love the one within you, love the one within you that feels abandoned and under-resourced and undernourished first, when you do that first, and then you show up to your relationships, you are then able to communicate how you like to be loved, how it feels good to be loved. You can self-advocate for your own needs because you're showing up resourced. You're showing up with a sovereign understanding of your own self and your own trauma and your own shadow and your own inner child expressions and the ones within you that feel abandoned. There isn't this panic that someone needs to know how to love that part of you. Oh, well, they'll never know how to love me. You know that voice within us that's like, well, they're just like never going to know how to love me. Well, what if you love you? What if you love that part of you? And then you show up resourced and you're able to more accurately and from a place of self-agency and authority communicate, like, here's what I've discovered about myself and how it is that I need to be loved, or it feels good to be loved, or it feels good to be seen. Like, these are my needs within relationship. These are my needs within partnership. Our Lady of Guadalupe speaks to our free will choice to ask for divine intervention and assistance. You have a right to ask for support. and practice the embodiment of faith. And when you do, the message is received. The blessing and the miracle and the answer is already on its way to you. But perhaps it won't look like the way you thought it would initially look. And that's where the spiritual maturity of staying open to like, what is for me will come to me, is already on its way to me, comes into play. It's like, again, that teaching, that spiritual truth of all of this is happening for me, not to me. So sometimes the blessing and the miracle and the answered prayer shows up in a different way than we thought it would. But if we can trust and we can resource the protection and the guidance of the divine mother, of divine love, of our higher selves, of God, Goddess, Source, Great Spirit, whatever language resonates for you, the universe, if we can be in our spiritual maturity and get humble enough to say, like, be at the altar and say, like, this is not the way I thought it would turn out, but I trust this. And I actually trust that there's a divine plan and a divine order unfolding beyond what my humanity could perceive in this moment, but the divinity within me trusts and knows and has faith is real. And it is a choice. Spiritual maturity will also invite you to not only ask for divine intervention and assistance in moments of crisis, but to be humble enough to ask for that guidance every day, breath to breath, consecrating your free will to divine will. Our free will would have us do an infinite amount of things. What would your free will consecrated to the divine will of your higher self have you do? It's oftentimes the scary, vulnerable choice. It's the one that you know you need to make, or the thing that you need to do, but fear. So, Our Lady of Guadalupe, the Empress of Protection, says, I am safe and divinely protected. I am held in love at all times. Spiritual maturity will also ironically have you coming to the altar of your own heart to receive this support and guidance again with the innocence, wonder, and awe of a child of the divine, of a child of the stars, of a child of God, Goddess, Source, the universe, the multiverse. And that child's like innocence, like our true nature, our true essence, loves to be surprised. They look up with eyes open, heart open, chest open, and they allow themselves to be continuously surprised and affirmed through the surprise, through the miracles, through things unfolding in a way that maybe our ego and our human mind did not perceive, but our hearts perhaps had an instinct or a knowing or an understanding about. Let yourself be continuously surprised and affirmed in how supported, guided, and protected you are. With eyes to see and ears to hear. It's a choice. It's a choice. It's a lens. To operate from the consciousness of your higher self is to experience life through a lens. What did we say at the beginning? As we come into a next level of intimacy and familiarity with our own inner voice of divine love, faith, trust, clarity, alignment, discernment, grace, compassion, beauty, unlimited creativity, divine solutions, and sovereignty, our higher selves, we remember we are both the key and the keeper, and the answers we've been looking for can be found when we're willing to go within and listen. So again, we have that humbleness of the child who's willing to just listen, to surrender to the wisdom of the Divine Mother, to sense that presence of love and trust that it's real, and to not gaslight ourselves into making it up or doing this thing that I totally used to do, especially as I was recovering from a shit ton of religious trauma, which is try to prove that God is real, that Goddess is real, that Source is real, that Spirit is real, that magic is real. Stop trying to prove it. Whenever you're in proving mode, you don't have eyes to see and ears to hear. You may see the angel numbers all the time and whatever, because you're looking for proof, or manically pull the tarot cards at the altar, but can you get quiet enough to listen to your own heart? Can you get humble enough to listen to your own heart? Can you root in your innocence enough to listen to your own heart? Ready for the next one? Oh, actually, one last thing. This card says, love is the greatest, most powerful form of protection, and invites us to ask ourselves, do I experience the love of a divine mother within me? And we can ask ourselves that question every day and strip the layers of doubt and resistance and all of that confirmation bias that says it's not going to work for us, or we're not good enough to do it, or we're not smart enough, or we're not spiritual enough, or whatever it is for you, and just be in our humbleness and be in our willingness and say, I know that it's possible for me to experience this. I know that I come from this. I trust that I come from this, and it is my right to experience this. So I'm going to get quiet enough and still enough and humble enough and willing enough until I feel it. And it's an everyday prayer, and it's an everyday devotion, and it's multiple times a day. Okay, I have so much more I could say on this, but let's move on to the next one. Also, I love the little like angel on the wall behind us. Hello. Hello. Okay, so the next one is a personal favorite of mine. And also, these two cards are from the Divine Feminine Oracle by Megan Waterson. I will be pulling through this deck a lot until I don't. This is one of my main decks, oracle decks, that I use with my clients, and so I'm deeply intimate and familiar with it, so it feels really exciting to share it with you. Okay, so our next Divine Feminine Oracle is Sarah La Kali. She is the queen of the outsiders and a beloved divine feminine presence of the Romani people. Her mantra is, I have arrived. I am where I will always be, in love. And just a spoiler alert, the rest of the cards also talk about this, and we're also in this Libra new moon transmission. Again, even if you're not listening to this around the Libra new moon 2021, my intention with all of the devotional drip transmissions is that it is relevant regardless of where we are in the astrological, how do I want to say it? Turmoil of what it is to exit an old paradigm and birth a new one through our willingness to embody it. Okay, so Sarah La Kali, I have arrived. I am where I will always be, in love. There are a few legends that surround Saint Sarah, but my personal favorite is that she was the daughter of Mary Magdalene and Jesus. And I just want to read this little passage to you. This is from the Divine Feminine Oracle. This is on page 211. We love it. Okay. The third legend is that Saint Sarah is the daughter of Mary Magdalene and Jesus Christ. During the persecution of the early Christians, it is believed that Mary Magdalene fled with young Sarah, Jesus' mother, and Mary of Bethany to the south of France. There she raised Sarah and continued her ministry of love, of becoming what Christ referred to as true human beings, meaning both fully human and fully divine. So Saint Sarah is known as the Queen of the Outsiders and represents the spiritual tenets of the Camargue cross, which I'm wearing right here. And those tenets are faith and hope, but above all, love. So again, we have love. Again, we're in the transmission of love. Love as our only purpose and our only home. Love as not as something we need to earn, but as something that we are. Love as something to embody and live from. This card says, home is only ever as far as we allow ourselves to be from our own heart. Which I love, because so often when I'm mentoring and guiding and working with people, something that they'll say is, I just feel lost. I feel lost. And without a doubt, when we come home into the heart, when we connect to the heart chakra, when we connect to the breath, when we connect to the body, and we specifically focus the power of our awareness on the heart, we come home. We come home. Home is only ever as far as we allow ourselves to be from our own heart. Love as our only purpose and our only home. Love as not something we need to earn. We cannot earn it. And anyone who's making you earn it is doing some weird codependent abusive shit. Love is something that we are. Love is something that we embody. Saint Sarah is a call to awaken to the divine love from within. So we awaken to the love from within, a continued process of awakening, a daily surrendering. You might not feel it at first, or maybe you felt it before, but it feels hard to access in this moment. Or maybe you are like listening to this and you are buzzing on divine love. Regardless, again, layer by layer, we peel. And we connect deeper and deeper and deeper. There's no beginning and no end. We only deepen into the transmission. So Saint Sarah is a call to awaken to the divine love from within and live from the truth and unwavering presence of it. She teaches that there's nothing that you need to perfect or prove before you can receive love. So if you're in a cycle of perfecting or proving in your relationships in order to receive love, I'm going to invite you to investigate that and make a different choice. And remember that love is not something that we need to earn. Love is something that we are. You can't even earn it. It's already done. It is already done. It is done. It is done. It is done. There is nothing you need to wait in order to become. There is nothing you need to, let me say it this way. There's nothing you need to wait to happen before you're worthy for love. You don't need to wait to become something. Oh, once I perfect myself in this way or heal this thing or fix this thing, then I'm going to be worthy of love. You're worthy of love right now, in this iteration, in this moment, right now. There's only the deep, abiding truth that love is not outside of you. Love is not outside of you. So even if and when, in those messy moments in relationship, when you maybe feel lonely or outcast or persecuted or victim, there is a well of love within you waiting to anoint you. There's nothing you need to wait to become first. And this also applies to when it comes to building new relationships. Like, we don't need to perfect ourselves before we enter the container of a relationship. Because again, if we're creating relationships and both parties understand that it's a co-creation and there's this third entity that's the relationship, and we're coming with offerings and we're coming with truth and we're coming in our sovereignty and we're coming respecting the other person's autonomy and sovereignty, then that creates a container and permission for growth to happen. And growth isn't pristine, it's messy. Growth is messy. Healing isn't linear. It's not gonna, you can't check off all the boxes. Again, there's this like faith, there's this trust, there's this obedience and devotion to divine love. And it's like, in that moment that feels really hard and sticky, it's like, higher self, please resource me and guide me in the way that love would have me move. So many times when I'm in, or rather I should say times throughout my life when I've been in complicated or hard dynamics with people within relationship, I ask my higher self and the higher self of that person to bless the relationship and to guide us both as stewards of love. And really, we can only be responsible for ourselves. So I ask to be a steward of love. I ask for love to guide me. And that means being humble enough to not let the raging inner child or inner teenager drive the car, or let the inner punisher that also wants to punish other people, because if you're in pain, you want other people to be in pain too, drive the car. It says, I'm willing to surrender everything at the altar, all of my shit, all of my projections, all of my old identities, all of my predicting of the future, and I'm willing to just be humble, to be in the moment-to-moment evolution of two beings that breath to breath are shifting and changing as living, breathing organisms. And I'm willing to meet this moment to moment. I don't need to predict what's going to happen. I don't need to project what is happening. Can I be present enough with love to see what's actually here? Eyes to see, ears to hear. So even if and when you're in those messy moments, there's still love waiting to anoint you, waiting to guide you. It's not like you've fallen and the divine is like, ha ha ha, you silly child. How dare you fall off the bike when you're learning to ride, or how dare you fall when you're learning to walk. No, there's a celebration. Again, think of that divine mother, think of the divine father, think of that like inner divine parent. There's a celebration of the growth process. It's like, wow, look at you go. Look at you go. Get up and try again. What do you need this time? How can I support you? That voice exists within us. It's there. It's in everyone. The meditation on this card says, enter the heart and ask to experience love, true love, and let it fill you head to soul. Maybe even just pause this video and enter the heart, ask to experience love, and let it fill you head to soul, and take a couple deep breaths and just see what's available for you to access and resource in this moment. There is belonging that you can access and find within your own heart at all times. Thank you, Sarah La Kali, for your teachings and transmissions. Okay, moving on to our next card. We're going to zip through the next three fairly quickly because these two Divine Feminine oracles just like came in with some divine love fireworks. We're going to go to the bear, and this is from the Animal Spirit Guidebook, The Wild Unknown, from Kim Kranz. It's an old one if you can't tell, my book's really old. And we have the bear. I love this card because I've been thinking about this so much, especially as Mercury's in retrograde right now. And one of my teachers once said, retrograde brings us back to get what we need in order to move forward. So do you have eyes to see and ears to hear and a heart being guided by love in order to like see the patterns that are repeating themselves, in order to resource and access that clarity, integrate it and embody it in order to move forward? The bear is asking. The bear is about waking from spiritual slumber and beginning anew. Interesting that we also talked about the Thich Nhat Hanh exercise, beginning anew, that will be linked at the blog link below. Because that energy is obviously very present. I love being in devotion to divine love. These cards that came out, they weave their own story, and I'm just a stewardess. I'm just a student. I'm just a willing vessel. And, you know, I think if you're drawn to the Blood, Bone, and Honey temple space and this sort of transmission and channel, chances are you are too. Because we're all just walking each other back home to love and who it is that we actually are and what the fuck it is that we're actually here to do. So I love this card, waking from spiritual slumber and beginning anew, especially for this new moon. And honestly, for whatever moment you're watching this in, because even if you're not watching it on the new moon, again, I'm trusting that your higher self is guiding you to this and you're going to hear this when you need it. So this card speaks to an individual on the cusp of new directions and transformation. And woven into this reading, I want to speak to the awakening that is triggered when we connect to a love that cannot be secured outside of us, but only accessed through our own willingness to connect with it. When we are, and I know we spoke to this briefly, so I'm going to keep it short, but when we are loyal to securing love outside of us via performing an identity or a self-belief that we learned in order to secure that love, but then we realize, oh, I don't need to secure love outside of me, I can access it from within. I can actually be who I am now. I can actually share who I am now. I can actually do what I'm here to do. There's this courageous awakening. There's this, wow, like I can just let go of all these old identities that were doing this weird codependent thing And I'm not going to judge myself for doing that because I get it. We all get programmed to do the thing. But I'm going to let this awakening happen, and I'm going to be humble enough to I'm thinking about the retreat that I taught last spring called Emergence, where we talked about the caterpillar spinning the chrysalis, dissolving into nothing except a couple of organs and liminal discs, growing new wings and emerging anew. Like, are you humble enough? Are you obedient enough? Are you devoted enough to love to dissolve into the sovereignty of slop? To dissolve into nothingness, to let it all fucking go, to release attachment to all those old identities so that something new can emerge, so that something new can awaken and be birthed. It's interesting because the out of balance position for this card points to lethargy and heaviness. And so when we're holding on to those old identities, it can feel really fucking heavy. We can feel dragged down and like, oh, we're waking up every morning and we're just doing the thing that we have to do in order to get through. That is a surefire sign that you are ready to shed some shit and awaken. Connecting to divine love within will change your life. You're no longer out there seeking other people's approval. Your free will is not enslaved to ensuring that other people get you. Your free will is consecrated to divine will, and you move the way that love would have you move. This card also points to, as we discussed before, some of the fumbling and discomfort that comes from awakening as we learn to love ourselves and others from a place of sovereignty. We got to learn how to do this. We've not been taught how to do this. We've been taught the antithesis of sovereignty. So again, we're not showing up to awakening perfect. Dude, you're going to be fucking in the valley, maybe covered in some dirt, just doing the thing. And if you're in a place of awakening, that's something I love to work with my clients on in private mentorship. This year and last year especially, I've walked wing to wing, heart to heart with a lot of really powerful fucking priestess, earth angel, goddess babes who are awakening or want to awaken to who they are. They're either ready to awaken or are in a process of awakening and they're ready for support. You can book a free clarity call to explore what it is to work with me in private mentorship on my website, bloodboneandhoney.com. You'll find the info there. Because we're also not meant to do this alone. I certainly have multiple teachers, guides, mentors, a whole fucking team that I work with on a very regular basis, because even though we're talking about resourcing this divine love within and our sovereignty, that also means that we're sovereign enough and we love ourselves enough to access and get the support and receive the support that we need. Yeah, it's both. It's both. And it's from a place of love that we secure that support for ourselves. Calling in a practitioner or a therapist or a coach or a teacher from a place of self-loathing and, oh, I'm just such a fucking hot mess and I just don't know what I'm doing and I'm so lost is very different than calling in a teacher, a coach, a mentor, a therapist, a guide from a place of like, wow, I know that there's so much more for my life and I love myself too much to continue to consent to this cycle of suffering. So try that on and see what comes forward for you. Okay, so again, we're not showing up to awakening perfect. It's not possible. We're showing up willing and breaking the construct of perfectionism in the process. In balance, this card points to a yearning to grow. This yearning to grow, this excitement to grow, like even when it's hard, even when it's like, I can't do another push-up, literally or metaphorically, you know that when you befriend the discomfort, that's when you actually move through. When you meet the discomfort and you breathe in the sensation and you don't let it be a stop sign, but you just let it be information that's moving through your body, you break through. You get stronger. You build strength over time. Out of balance, again, this card points to a lethargy or a heaviness. And I can't do this, and this is not possible for me. I'll never get out of this. If your internal voice is not bringing you to a place of expansion and possibility, that's how you know it's time to resource the voice of your higher self. To bring this energy into balance, this card points to movement and exercise. And I'm going to take and offer this as movement of energy in general. So whether that be within your body or within a relationship dynamic, be willing to breathe new life into the relationship, whether it be with yourself, others. Usually it's both. Start with yourself as my recommendation on this one. So then you can show up to that relationship embodied, resourced in divine love, resourced with your higher self. So be willing to breathe new life into the relationship and be humble enough to begin anew, which means everyone at the table, and you can only be responsible for your own self. So you need to be willing to move forward and not use the past as evidence for why something is or isn't going to work. I find my clients and trauma survivors in general doing a lot of this. We're using the past, including myself, we're using the past as evidence for the future. And what a brilliant thing to do. That's probably, how you kept yourself safe and alive. So bless up to the brilliance of the system for coming up with that solution. But now that's no longer serving you. It's no longer serving you to project or predict versus staying open to potential and possibility. It requires faith, it requires trust, it requires willingness, it requires devotion to becoming more awake in every moment. We've got to drop the I know everything, I know what I'm talking about, this is the way it is, this is the truth, this is right, this is wrong. We have to drop that shit. We have to drop it if we're going to become more awake individually and collectively. And we have to become more conscious. And as we become more conscious, more awake, more aware, we have to be in our knowing that there may be, and in fact there will be, some mess as things reorganize themselves, as your reality rearranges itself. What did we say at the beginning? External harmony and balance is created through internal harmony and balance. So when you shift your internal reality, you're going to shift your external reality. As above, so below, as within, so without. Okay, Bear. Do we have anything else to share here? Okay. Last thing here, can you stay devoted to awakening, or do you get fatigued, lethargic, and heavy in a lack of love? When you're humble enough to return to love and say, okay, love, how should I move now? I'm pretty fucking tired. How can I take a load of fear off? How can I take a load of self-doubt off? How should I move now? You surrender to a higher guidance through the stargate portal of your heart. And when you do that, you will receive an answer, even if the voice is quiet to start out at first. Think of it as developing intimacy over time with that voice, and that voice will become louder. We're all learning to love again. We're all learning what sovereignty is again. We're all remembering that we're fully human and fully divine after being gaslit and programmed and conditioned out of believing that's possible. And believing that the altar is something outside of us, the church is something outside of us, God is something outside of us, love is something outside of us, prosperity, abundance, pleasure, beauty is something outside of us to be accessed, secured, and gained, versus something that we are, that we access through going within. So we're all learning to love again, and the playing field is even. So break down the hierarchy and meet yourself and all beings at the altar with offerings. Then we have, going to wrap up our last two cards, Heart and Soul. This is from the Magdalene deck. I forgot who this is by because this is a new deck for me. Tony Carmine Salerno. Again, sorry if I'm pronouncing that name wrong. If that person happens to watch this or you know this deck. Okay, so we've got heart and soul. The mantra is, you are blessed and guided by the eternal spirit of love. Okay, so we've got, I am safe and divinely protected. I am held in love at all times. I have arrived. I am where I will always be in love. We've got the bear that's like, it's time to awaken and begin anew. Remember who you are as love. And we've got heart and soul, which says, you are blessed and guided by the eternal spirit of love. This card is calling you to close your eyes and bathe in the eternal love of the divine. of the Divine Mother, of the Divine Father, of God, Goddess, Source, Great Spirit, Universe, Multiverse, love. It's calling you to close your eyes and bathe in that love. To trust, and maybe even just in this moment, if you feel called to close your eyes and just like receive this transmission through the heart, not through the brain. Maybe you've been busy taking notes, or you've been doing dishes or something. I love to listen to things like this when I'm like tending to the temple and like fill the house with some kind of channeled transmission that I resonate with. So maybe take a pause, take a moment, take a breath here. We've been together for about an hour now, so it's probably a good time to just take a pause, let the system down regulate. We've been really fired up in love. And just listen and receive this. Trust that all is unfolding as it should. Trust the process. Be process-oriented versus results-oriented. Stay out of the results business and stay present to this moment. To respect yourself and others as living, breathing organisms allows permission for everyone to change, moment to moment, breath to breath. It's time to drop the projections and the predictions and be present. Heart presence, soul presence. Allow yourself to be the chalice for the wisdom of love to shine through, and believe that you're worthy of that. Claim that. And remember that love is not outside of you. All unfolds in perfect harmony. Life is always full of opportunity. Say to yourself, I am guided and protected. I surrender my concerns to divine love. And just try that on. I'm guided and protected, and I surrender my concerns to divine love. And maybe just even feel a weight come off of you. Carry a lot around. The projections and the predictions are heavy. In presence, there's possibility. In respecting yourself and all other living beings as living, breathing organisms changing in every breath is to be present and respect what life is as an expression of love, as an expression of beauty. And then we have our last card, the guardian angel, reminding us that love is but one eternal moment. Energetically, nothing ever truly dies, everything just simply transforms. And again, like that permission, that self-permission and that permission for others to be living, breathing organisms that change. If you're turning a sword against yourself and holding something against yourself, chances are you're also holding that sword against other people, or vice versa. If you've been out there making other people wrong, or pointing the sword or pointing your finger at other people, chances are you're having a lot of that own experience with yourself. How we operate in our external reality and in our relationships is actually a great mirror for how we operate in relationship with our own selves, and vice versa. So for me, this guardian angel card speaks to the power to transform our relationships through love, and the power that love has to motivate, to activate, and transform. Love motivates, love activates, and love transforms. We have to remember that everything and everyone is always held within love's embrace. Even the person who's committed the most evil on the planet, whatever the fuck that means, they're also held within love. So love yourself, love people, and love the process. If everything was all perfect, then what would be the point? Like, what would be the point of this journey for our souls to evolve, to create more life? Enjoy the ride in divine love, in the divine love mobile. Enjoy the ride. And remember that divine and eternal love can always be accessed from within. It was 010222 when I just said that on the little timer above. Okay, so in closing, thank you so much for being present with me and being present for yourself, really, for this transmission, present with your higher self, present with love and the messages that it held for you today. I would love to hear how this is resonating for you, if this resonated for you, how it resonated for you, what it's guiding you into some action around. Please comment below, like and share, follow the channel. There's a lot more where this came from. We're just getting kicked off in this series. Such an honor to just come into some sacred space, into some coven space with you. Outside of all time and space, again, whenever you are receiving this transmission, it is the perfect time for you. Again, we got our angel on the wall affirming that. And below this video, you're going to find a link to my blog where I've provided you with higher self embodiment journal prompts and movement prompts, plus a playlist to support you in a deeper level of reception, digestion, and integration of what's coming forward for you with this message at this time. I encourage you to like really land there and let yourself receive, digest, and integrate. It's one thing to hear the transmission. It's another thing to take notes on it. Maybe you were doing that, sitting in some communion while we were going through this transmission. And then it's another thing to be like, okay, how does this specifically apply to my life? And why is this message arriving in my life at this time? And what is it catalyzing me into action around? Okay, here's to awakening to an eternal, unconditional, and divine love from within. I love you. Many blessings. Until next time. Mwah. Goodbye, goddess.